We must also realize that the problems of racial injustice and economic injustice cannot be solved without a radical redistribution of political and economic power. We read one day, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But if a man doesn't have a job or an income, he has neither life nor liberty and the possibility for the pursuit of happiness. He merely exists. Estimated that we spend $322,000 for each enemy we kill in Vietnam, while we spend in the so-called war on poverty in America only about $53 for each person classified as poor. The promises of the Great Society have been shot down on the battlefield of Vietnam, making the poor, white and Negro, bear the heaviest burdens both at the front and at home. The other thing I want you to understand is this, that it didn't cost the nation one penny to integrate lunch counters. It didn't cost the nation one penny to guarantee the right to vote. But now we are dealing with issues that cannot be solved without the nation spending billions of dollars and undergoing a radical redistribution of economic power. Yes, yes. All labor has dignity. Yes. But you're doing another thing. You are reminding not only Memphis, but you are reminding the nation that it is a crime for people to live in this rich nation and receive starvation wages. America's opportunity to help bridge the gulf between the haves and the have-nots. And the question is whether America will do it. There's nothing new about poverty. What is new is that we now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty. And the real question is whether we have the will. At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today, many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with. And this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington, in this campaign, we are coming to get our check. We must also realize that the problems of racial injustice and economic injustice cannot be solved without a radical redistribution of political and economic power. We read one day, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But if a man doesn't have a job or an income, he has neither life nor liberty and the possibility for the pursuit of happiness. He merely exists. Estimated that we spend $322,000 for each enemy we kill in Vietnam, while we spend in the so-called war on poverty in America only about $53 for each person classified as poor. The promises of the Great Society have been shot down on the battlefield of Vietnam, making the poor, white and Negro, bear the heaviest burdens both at the front and at home. The other thing I want you to understand is this, that it didn't cost the nation one penny to integrate lunch counters. It didn't cost the nation one penny to guarantee the right to vote. But now we are dealing with issues that cannot be solved without the nation spending billions of dollars and undergoing a radical redistribution of economic power. Yeah. All labor has dignity. Yes. But you're doing another thing. You are reminding not only Memphis, but you are reminding the nation that it is a crime for people to live in this rich nation and receive starvation wages. America's opportunity to help bridge the gulf between the haves and the have-nots. And the question is whether America will do it. There's nothing new about poverty. What is new is that we now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty. And the real question is whether we have the will. The problem. At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms. Not only that, today, many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check. I come here tonight and plead with you. Believe in yourself and believe that you're somebody. And as I said to a group last night, nobody else can do this for us. No document can do this for us. No Lincolnian Emancipation Proclamation can do this for us. No Kennedyan or Johnsonian Civil Rights Bill can do this for us. If the Negro is to be free, he must move down into the inner resources of his own soul and sign with a pen and ink of self-assertive manhood his own Emancipation Proclamation. Don't let anybody take your manhood. Be proud of our heritage. As somebody said earlier tonight, we don't have anything to be ashamed of. Somebody told a lie one day. They couched it in language. They made everything black, ugly, and evil. Look in your dictionary and see the synonyms of the word black. There's always something degrading and low and sinister. Look at the word white. It's always something pure, high, and clean. But I want to get the language right tonight. I want to get the language so right that everybody here will cry out, yes, I'm black, I'm proud of it, I'm black and beautiful.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our 47th annual Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Celebration. We are the Frontiers International Plainfield Area Club, and I am your host and club president, Safir Jenkins. I personally want to thank you for taking time out to join us as we honor the legacy and celebrate the life of Dr. King through our collective giving and sacrifice in the fulfillment of our mission to foster advancement through service. And believe it or not, if you have not yet heard, this is the longest running MLK Memorial Celebration of its kind in all of New Jersey. This year's theme is extrapolated from Dr. King's fourth and final book prior to his untimely death. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community. In his book, Dr. King analyzes the state of America's race relations and the results of the civil rights movement after it had been in existence for an entire decade. In many ways, we still continue to face similar struggles today, like those that made life for Black Americans so difficult in the 60s, whereby we find that justice is just out of reach for so many, and equal opportunity is seemingly a lofty yet unattainable goal. For over 60 years, in our own small ways, we at the Frontiers International Plainfield Area Club attempt to stem the tide of the vast racial wealth gap, inequality, and injustice in America for so many people within our community. Each year, we provide scholarship programs and educational opportunities to help give local young people an opportunity to further their education beyond high school. We also host free seminars and workshops to help educate and empower community members in key areas, including the unspoken truths of Black history, financial literacy, and health and wellness. In our district at Frontiers International, we are also developing a program for local young people to travel abroad to Africa as part of an exchange program to give them opportunities the likes of which have never been seen for many of us. With so many big goals and impactful programs, I invite you to join us by donating to our cause and or our scholarship program. The Frontiers International Plainfield Area Club is a 501c3 organization, and any qualified donations that you make to us are tax deductible. We will be accepting donations throughout the entirety of our program this morning. And to donate and change the life of a remarkable young person in our community, please visit the website shown below at bit.ly/MLK47 donate, or using your cell phone's camera, scan the QR code and you will be taken right to our donation page. Once you are there, simply click reserve your spot and donate amount of your choice. Well, ladies and gentlemen, today's program promises to be one of reflection, one of enjoyment, and certainly one of awe-inspiring hope. We have so much in store for you, so stay tuned and join us in celebrating the legacy of a man whose impact is still felt today. We are the Frontiers International Plainfield Area Club, and we stand for advancement through service.
Plainfield. My name is Charles McCray, President of the Plainfield City Council. I bring you greetings from the Mayor, Honorable Adrian O'Mapp, and the Plainfield City Council. Today we celebrate the legacy and life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. When we reflect on Dr. King's life, we see a man who stood up and served our nation. The Frontier Club of Plainfield is one of the most active and long-standing organizations within our community, which has served us with distinction, honor, and dedication. We thank them for their service to our community and hope that they will continue to work with us to help move the city forward. By moving the city forward, we hope that all Plainfielders can participate in Dr. King's dream, the nation's dream, and our dream of one Plainfield, one future. God bless Plainfield. God bless America.
Greetings, Frontier International Plainfield Area Club and honored guests. My name is Assemblywoman Linda Carter, representing the 22nd Legislative District in the New Jersey General Assembly. On behalf of Senate President Nick Scutari and Assemblyman Jim Kennedy, it is my honor and privilege to bring greetings to you and to congratulate the Frontiers International Plainfield Area Club on the 47th annual Dr. Martin Luther King celebration event. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is a moment each year when Americans across the country step up to make communities more equitable and to take action to bring into fruition the dream of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King fought for his dream and acknowledged and fought for systematic change. His life example is our call to action. While we have come a long way, we still have more to do to bring Dr. King's dream within the reach of our communities. We must stand together for good jobs, fair wages, safe neighborhoods, and quality education for our children. We must ensure the scales of justice work equally for all. Keep in mind, not only how justice is applied, but also how it is perceived and practiced. As Dr. King said, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. This remains today our great unfinished business. And as a member of the New Jersey Legislature, I commit to working with organizations like Frontiers International and community stakeholders across this great state to continue on the road of progress and to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy through service to our communities. Thank you for allowing me to say a few words today. Happy New Year and sincerest best wishes to you and all your loved ones.
Good morning. I'm Commissioner Rebecca Williams, and I bring greetings to you on behalf of the Union County Board of County Commissioners. I'm pleased to celebrate the life and legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at this year's 47th Memorial Celebration. Dr. King's legacy remains as strong today as it was during his lifetime. For this year, I'd like to reflect on a theme that was close to Dr. King's heart, and that is compassion. Dr. King makes a distinction between compassion and what he terms true compassion. One dictionary definition of compassion is sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. And that is so. That is, of course, compassion. That root word of com means together, and passion means capable of feeling or suffering. So when you put them together, compassion means being capable of feeling and suffering together, which means that when others suffer, I suffer. We collectively suffer. Now here's where Dr. King's distinction lies. In his Nobel Prize speech, he said that, and here's the quote, "True compassion is more than flinging a coin to a beggar. It comes to see that an edifice which produces beggars needs restructuring." What Dr. King is saying is that all the old models must fall. We need to reimagine and repair a society in which there's so much suffering. A coin tossed may alleviate an immediate problem, but it does not holistically heal our society. Now, please give when you can, but as you give, please keep in mind that we need to rethink how we care for those individuals in our spheres who have not been able to progress amidst our overall affluence. What kind of work we can do collectively to alleviate the suffering in our community? That is the question. I don't know the answer, but I know that it lies somewhere in internalizing Dr. King's words. So as you go about your day this week, maintain this idea of true compassion and demonstrate that true compassion to everyone you meet who may need it. So again, on behalf of the Union County Board of County Commissioners, I want to commend the Plainfield Area Club in keeping Dr. King's legacy alive, and I wish everyone a glorious, healthy, and happy New Year. Thank you.
Greetings. My name is Rhonda Wood, Executive Director of the Housing Authority of Plainfield and Chairman of the Premier Community Development Corporation, a 501c3 affiliate. On behalf of the Housing Authority of Plainfield and the Premier Community Development Corporation Board and myself, it gives me great pleasure to congratulate the Frontiers International Plainfield Area Club for 47 years of memorializing the legacy and achievements of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We are grateful to be part of this most auspicious celebration. Thank you.
Pianist, organist, songwriter, and choir director, Wendell Craig Woods began his 33-year residency as minister of music at the Shiloh Baptist Church of Plainfield in 1988. Serving as adjudicator at many notable music competitions, Wendell is also very active with the Gospel Music Workshop of America, Incorporated, serving as National Men's Council General Secretary and Northern New Jersey chapter representative. Winning several awards throughout his career, Wendell received the Reverend James Cleveland Pinnacle Award for Excellence and his years of service to the gospel music community. Appointed to the board of directors of the Plainfield Symphony Society, and having served as vice president, Wendell also serves as a commissioner on the Cultural and Heritage Commission of the City of Plainfield. We are pleased to announce this year's recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award, Wendell Craig Woods.
Hello, friends. It is with a heart full of joy and gladness that I greet you. When I was notified that I would be this year's recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award, I was both humbled and honored. I never imagined that the works I've committed to over the course of my life would lead to such an esteemed honor. I want to express my sincere thanks to the members of Frontiers International of Plainfield for this prestigious award and accept it in the spirit in which it is given. As we pause to observe the birthday of one whose life's work bespeaks selfless service, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., my hope and prayer is that the works I've done and shall continue to do speak for me, grace and peace.
After a remarkable career spanning 47 years in education, Flora Williams retired to help care for her 3 grandchildren and serve the Lord. A long-standing active member of Shiloh Baptist Church of Plainfield since 1984, Flora's scope of service includes serving as the first voiceover personality for Shiloh's TV ministry, Celebrating the Gospel, and as co-chair of the finance team. The sitting chair of the Deaconess Ministry, co-chair of First Impression Ministry, church council member, Bible teacher, member of the Women's Fellowship Committee, pastor team in love, and program director of the Shiloh Food Pantry and the Lord's Kitchen. It is there that Flora adopted 3 children as her godchildren. For these and all the other many accomplishments which we have not yet announced, we are pleased to introduce this year's recipient of the Community Service Award, Flora Williams.
Good morning, everyone. I am delighted to be the recipient of this prestigious award from the Frontiers International Plainfield Area Club. You have been a blessing for so many of our young people in helping them to further their education by providing scholarships, financial aid, counseling, and Big Brother support. I too feel so blessed to be able to help others when they have food insecurities. Since the introduction of the food pantry in 2006 and the Lord's Kitchen in 2010, I never could have imagined the impact that these two ministries would make on the community. The Lord's Kitchen has been a haven for those who are homeless and also those who are in need of a hot meal because of illness. The homeless, the sick and shut in, and those in quarantine in Union and Somerset counties are provided with a hot meal twice a week. And this will continue until they indicate that they are no longer interested. The food pantry provides bags of food twice a month for local families. In addition, if an emergency need arises, the families can receive food regardless of their location and regardless of the day or week. The Food Bank of New Jersey in Hillside, St. Luke Catholic Church in North Plainfield, Fanwood Presbyterian Church of Fanwood, Plainfield Public Library, Greek organizations, and individual donors have blessed us richly with lots of food over the years. Lastly, I could not have maintained these impactful ministries without the support from our pastor, Dr. Danielle Brown, and the members of the Shallow family who have dedicated their time, talent, and support of these ministries. Again, I thank you and have a blessed day.
Wife, mother, president, and CEO of nonprofit Wally and Xavier's Autistic Kids Can Do Incorporated, Talina Williams-Hurst supports families of students with autism and other disabilities through advocacy, socialization, education, and access to important resources to navigate the minutiae of parents' rights in special education. Empowered by her own experiences as a mother of children with disabilities, she founded Wally and Xavier's to lessen the burden families often face when advocating for supports and services in special education. Hosting the district's first Walk for Autism and Disabilities and opening the Wally and Xavier's Autistic Kids Can Do Inclusion Center, Talina continues to serve as a beacon of hope to families served by the Plainfield Public Schools District Special Education Programming. It gives us great pleasure to announce the recipient of the 2023 Award for Service to Youth, Talina Williams-Hurst.
Hi, my name is Talina Williams-Hurst, and I am President and CEO of Wally and Xavier's Autistic Kids Can Do. We're located at 1010 Park Avenue, Suite 202, here in the city of Plainfield. First, I want to thank the Frontiers International Plainfield Area Club for the honor of winning the nomination of this Youth Service Award. The Frontiers represent the epitome of helping our local youth in providing educational programs, mentorship, scholarships to help them beyond high school on an annual basis. I also want to let you guys know that I enjoy working with children of all abilities and helping parents who have children with special needs navigate through their journey of trying to make sure that their children have meaningful and successful lives, thus becoming productive adults. Please check out our social media so you can see all the wonderful things that we do for our families. We provide advocacy, social meetups, resources, and workshops, as well as webinars to better educate our parents about their basic rights. Our website again is spelled WALLYNZABYS.org. That's WallyandXaviers.org. Thank you so much.
For the 2021 and 22 academic year, the Lady Cardinals varsity volleyball team earned an overall team grade point average of 3.58. allowing them for the first time in history to earn the USMC AVCA Team Academic Award. This award honors volleyball teams that maintain a year-long GPA of 3.3 on a 4-point scale or 4.1 on a 5-point scale. Michaela Brown, Marca Cordova, Ania Cox, Edith Guadarrama, Ashley Jara, Madison McFarland, Kyra Simmons Thompson, Jada Wilkes, and Nayla Williams made academic excellence in the classroom their top priority. Under the leadership of coaches Shanice Sears and Caleb Williams, this is the first and trailblazing team to earn this honor. We are extremely proud of these scholar athletes, and this is the standard that we want to uphold for all of our teams. We are honored to present the 2023 Outstanding Achievement Award to the Lady Cardinals varsity volleyball team. And now, as we prepare to honor this year's Scholarship Awards recipients, join us for a performance by the Plainfield High School Choir.
When the night has come and the land is dark y la luna es la luz que brilla ante mí. Miedo no tendré, Dios sabe, just as long as you stand by me. And darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand junto a mí. Aunque las montañas o el cielo caigan, no voy a preocuparme, porque sé que tú estás junto a mí. No lloraré, no lloraré. Oh, I won't shed a tear, porque sé que tú estás junto a mí. And darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me. And darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand junto a mí. And darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by junto a mí. And darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand junto a mí, junto a mí. And darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand junto a mí, junto a mí.
And now for a word from the Plainfield Public Schools Interim Superintendent, Rashawn Hassan.
Greetings, Frontiers International Plainfield Area Club, distinguished guests, fellow educators, my brothers and sisters from the Plainfield Public School District, the City of Plainfield, and all who are joining us today on this virtual presentation of the 47th Annual Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Celebration. It's an honor to be here representing Plainfield Public Schools and to extend our gratitude to the Frontiers for hosting this event year after year. No other organization in New Jersey has led recognition of Dr. King longer than the Frontiers, and we are proud of their dedication and leadership. Our sincere thanks for carrying on this legacy. This year's theme, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community, leads me to reflect on the work that we've been doing in our schools. Our district has assembled a group of people, educators, board members, parents, business owners, elected officials, grandparents, and retirees to assist us in creating Plainfield Public Schools' strategic plan. The plan will become our blueprint for the work ahead during the next 3 to 5 years. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, we are making a leap from lethargy and inaction to confronting the needs of our schools and our community, right here and right now. Power, properly understood, is the ability to achieve purpose, wrote Dr. King in his 1967 book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. It is the strength required to bring about social, political, or economic changes. In this sense, power is not only desirable but necessary in order to implement the demands of love and justice. We are choosing community, the power we need to achieve our goals. In the days ahead, we are taking inventory of our programs and the status of our schools and our community. The results will be the base that will let us know where we have been and where we need to go. This process will lead us to the creation of an action plan. Our goal is to create an action plan that will develop and address the goals and strategies that will be developed by the group. The action plan will produce the activities needed to achieve those goals and strategies, to ultimately create an educational system that will prepare our students and staff for the educational needs of today. In 1967, as Dr. King looked back to the decade following the Montgomery bus boycott of 1956, the same year he wrote the message we are remembering today. Dr. King said, in essence, that schools have been the historic roots of social mobility, but when African Americans and others of the underserved asked that schools play the same function for them, the answer is that schools cannot do the job, scapegoating the families themselves for failing to do the job. Our persistence will undoubtedly produce the change that Dr. King refers to in his message today. Already this year, Plainfield Public Schools has invested over $5.8 million in our infrastructure and over $8 million in curriculum and instruction that our students and staff deserve. We are moving the Plainfield Public School District forward. If you would like to be part of this change in our schools, we welcome you to join us for discussions on the strategic plan on January 20th and 21st of 2023. Thank you for inviting me, and have a great 2023.
And now a word from Plainfield Board of Education President, Hanae Wyatt.
Hello, I am Hanae M. Wyatt, President of the Plainfield Board of Education. On behalf of the Board of Education, district staff, and students, I want to extend a gracious welcome to all of you that are joining the 47th Annual Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Celebration, hosted by the Frontiers International Plainfield Area Club. This year's theme, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community, signifies the hard work that my colleagues and I are committed to achieving for the Plainfield Public School District. We continue to remain united and ready to take on the task of moving Plainfield Public Schools forward. Thank you for inviting me, and please enjoy the celebration.
And now, honoring two remarkable high school seniors, join us for our annual Scholarship Awards ceremony.
Our first scholarship recipient winner for 2023 is Anaya Veronica Cox. Anaya is a senior at Plainfield Academy for the Arts and Advanced Studies High School, where she has exhibited academic excellence. She is an honor roll student. She is the president of the Student Council, president of the Dance Studio Competition Team, and a member of the Debate Club. Ms. Cox is also a member of the girls volleyball team, where she was voted the most improved player, the most versatile player, and team motivator. In addition, she is a member of the New Generation Worship Center media team, where she is editor, videographer, photographer, and head of the social media. She's also a member of the Queen's TV Network, team manager of the boys volleyball team, and she provides volunteer work through the Girl Scouts with food drives and helping at nursing homes. Ms. Cox, in her essay, said that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy inspires her to be a leader people listen to through good times and adversity. She states that Dr. King stepped up to lead no matter what obstacles were in his way. She wants her words and actions to be a legacy that will forever touch the lives of those around her and those who come after her. She stated, "You must take the voice of the past, build from it, and make it the voice of the future." Ms. Cox has applied to Delaware State University, King University, Montclair State University, Centenary University, St. Augustine's University, and
Hello. I just want to say thank you so much for this scholarship award, Frontier Scholars of America. Thank you so much for believing in me and giving me this scholarship award. I first want to thank my parents for pushing me to be who I am today. I also want to thank my high school counselor, Ms. Bergamato, for helping me through all scholarship things and all of my college applications. So thank you so much. And I also just want to thank my volleyball coaches because they put me through so much to help me be as well-rounded and a leader that I am today. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Announcing our second scholarship award recipient, Georgia Haig. Georgia Haig is a senior at Plainfield High School, where she exhibits academic excellence. She is an honor roll student and an active member of Plainfield High School Dance Ensemble. Her dance experience has helped her gain motivation and inspiration. Georgia appreciates her family and friends because of the way they constantly motivate her to believe in herself. She wants to give back that same energy to other people. Georgia stated in her essay that she wants people to realize the importance of encouraging themselves to be their best. Her strong determination to impact others is the reason why she wants to pursue psychology as her area of study. She has applied to Keene University, Ramable College, and many more to come. She aspires to heal people's hearts and minds and hopes in her future to have changed the lives of others for the better. Georgia Haig, we wish you the very best and congratulations. And now, a performance by the Plainfield Academy for the Arts and Advanced Studies Jazz Band.
Places on my heart is where you live. Memories from our start, the love you give. Days when we're alone and you were in my heart. The blueness of the trueness of our love. Nights and moonlit skies, a gentle kiss. Something in your eyes fills me with bliss. Hold me in your arms, then I will recall the blueness of the trueness of our love. The blueness of the trueness
Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker for today. Dr. Randall Pinkett has established himself as an entrepreneur, innovator, speaker, author, media personality, and DEI expert who is leading the way in business, technology, and equity for all. He is the co-founder, chairman, and CEO of BCT Partners, a global multi-million-dollar research, training, consulting, technology, and data analytics firm whose mission is to provide insights about diverse people that lead to equity. The company has been recognized by Forbes as one of America's best management consulting firms, Ernst & Young as EY Entrepreneur of the Year, Manage HR Magazine as a top 10 firm for diversity and inclusion, the Black Enterprise BE 100's list of the nation's largest Black-owned businesses, and the Inc. 5000 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. Dr. Pinkett is an expert in several areas relating to emerging technologies, big data analytics, social innovation, culture, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and is a regular contributor on MSNBC, CNN, and Fox Business News. An international public speaker, he is the author and co-author of several books, including Black Faces in High Places, Black Faces in White Places, Data-Driven DEI, Campus CEO, and No Money Down CEO. He holds 5 business degrees, including a Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering from Rutgers University, a master's degree in computer science from the University of Oxford in England, and a master's in electrical engineering, an MBA, and PhD from MIT. Most notably, he was the first and only African American to receive the prestigious Rhodes Scholarship at Rutgers University. He was inducted to the Academic All-America Hall of Fame as a former high jumper, long jumper, sprinter, and captain of the Rutgers men's track and field team. And he was the winner of NBC's reality TV show, The Apprentice. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, join me in welcoming to today's event, Dr. Randall Pinkett.
Thank you to Frontiers International Plainfield Area Club. Thank you to Saphir Jenkins, President. Thank you to John Brinkley and Michael Pine, the co-chairs of this 47th Annual Memorial Celebration. A special shout out to some longtime Frontier members and friends, Dr. Lendell Bethel, the founder of the Africana Studies Department and a professor emeritus at Rutgers, and Wally Torian, another esteemed administrator from my alma mater, Rutgers, and to Mayor Adrian Mapp, and to all of the distinguished officials and representatives and Frontiers International affiliates that have gathered for this 47th Annual Memorial Celebration. Thank you for the honor and the privilege of being your keynote speaker on this 2023 Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration. I'd encourage those of you who are listening to set social media on fire. That is to follow Plainfield Frontiers at Plainfield Frontiers with the hashtag Plainfield Frontiers MLK. I am at Randall Pinkett with 1 L, and certainly donate and contribute to the incredible work that Frontiers International is doing through the links and the QR codes that have been provided. Now, to segue to my remarks, let me share my screen, and we can go ahead and get started here. All right. So let me begin by stating the obvious. What lies on the hearts and minds of anyone gathered at this 47th Annual MLK Memorial Celebration has to be the events of the past 2 years from 2020 to 2022. I'm talking about the shootings of Ahmaud Arbery on February 23rd, 2020. Breonna Taylor, March 13th, 2020. George Floyd, May 25th, 2020, among others, all juxtaposed against a COVID-19 pandemic, or perhaps endemic, that continues to plague our society. And these deeply troubling realities are only layered on the deaths of those who preceded them. Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. Eric Garner, Staten Island, New York. Sandra Bland, Waller County, Texas. Tamir Rice, Cleveland, Ohio. Sean Bell, Queens, New York. And most recently, Keenan Anderson in Los Angeles, California, who was tased to death just days ago on January 3rd of this year. And the untold numbers of unarmed Black men and women whose sad and untimely deaths did not make the headlines. Surely on the hearts and minds of anyone gathered at this MLK celebration are the uprisings and protests that resulted from George Floyd's murder that we witnessed throughout the summer of 2020. The siege on the US Capitol that we witnessed at the beginning of 2021. The overturning of Roe versus Wade that we witnessed in the middle of 2022. And the mass shootings that sadly, but inevitably may continue into 2023. All amidst ever-increasing division, ever-increasing discord, and ever-increasing divisiveness in our society. In light of all these tragedies and developments, I don't know about you, but the most persistent and urgent question on my mind for this year's MLK Memorial Celebration has been and remains, where, oh, where do we go from here? And it should come as no surprise that the title for my speech and the theme of this year's Frontiers International 47th Memorial event is exactly that, the title from Dr. King's seminal book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? And it is that very question that I would like to wrestle with, and I invite you to wrestle with this morning. The book that bears the title, Where Do We Go From Here, was released by Dr. King in 1967, just months before his assassination on April 4th, 1968. It was, as was mentioned earlier, the last book he would author. And it is worth noting that the content for the book, which begins in 1965, is eerily reminiscent of the context in which we find ourselves in 2023, clearly suggesting that the more things change, the more things stay the same. Now, I'll weave some of Dr. King's writings from the book throughout my remarks, but please allow me to first describe some of the book's content for those who perhaps have not read it or are unfamiliar with this work. Now, interestingly, the book begins exactly where the movie Selma ends, in 1965, with President Lyndon Johnson signing the Voting Rights Act of 1965. But in the book, Dr. King very quickly acknowledges the realities that ensued immediately after the signing of the Voting Rights Act. Again, it was August 6, 1965, President Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It was 5 days later, August 11th, 1965, after that landmark legislation became law, that the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles, California, broke out in flames on the nation's television screens. Uprisings erupted, leaving 34 people dead, more than 1,000 people hospitalized, and nearly 4,000 people arrested. And all of this happened almost 60 years ago from today. Let me give you a little more context. Having won the right to vote in 1965, 1 year later, in 1966, Dr. King and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference began focusing on urban issues, with Chicago, Illinois as the locus for their organizing events. Urban issues became Dr. King's focus, so much so that he decided to spend at least 3 days a week living in one of Chicago's poorest Black communities, a West Side area known as Lawndale, where he witnessed firsthand deteriorating neighborhoods, dysfunctional schools, dilapidated housing, and a disheartening lack of job opportunities. This was the Dr. King who authored where do we go from here? A Dr. King who, on the heels of victory in Selma, where they won the right to vote, was impassioned by the young people of Watts, informed by the urban streets of Chicago, and inspired by the community members and organizers of the Windy City, who withstood their conditions with dignity and with grace. But again, the circumstances surrounding Dr. King then in the 1960s are eerily reminiscent of the circumstances surrounding us in 2020. Think about it. 1960s, a white police officer, Lee Manicus, approaches a black man, Marquette Fry, in Watts, Los Angeles, on suspicion of drunken driving. And Fry is arrested and subdued, causing a crowd to gather. Soon after, word circulates within the community that police assaulted Fry, fighting breaks out, and violence spreads throughout Watts. 2020s, a white police officer, Derek Chauvin, approaches a black man, George Floyd, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, on suspicion of purchasing cigarettes with a counterfeit bill. Floyd is arrested and subdued, causing a crowd to gather. Soon after, a video circulates throughout social media that Chauvin killed Floyd. Marches break out and word spreads throughout Minneapolis. 1960s, the Watts uprisings usher a wave of uprisings in cities across the country, including Detroit and Newark, New Jersey, with people lining the streets to chants of Black Power. 2020s, the Minneapolis marches usher in an entire wave of protests in cities across the globe, including the US, Australia, Germany, Japan, with people lining the streets to chants of Black Lives Matter. 1960s, the country has made tremendous progress, but there is more work that remains to be done. 2020s, the country has made tremendous progress, but there is more work that remains to be done. So I'll say it again. In the 60 years from the 1960s to the 2020s, the more things have changed, the more they have stayed the same. And that is not to negate the progress that we've made. But when 2023 even begins to look and sound and feel like 1963, which it does, that is a wake-up call of epic proportions. We cannot, and I say cannot, allow this trajectory to continue. Not on our watch, not on our watch, not on our watch, not on our watch, not on our watch. Arguably, we are once again at a crossroads. Chaos or community? Which will we choose? It's been said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. Well, the last time I checked, nobody in Plainfield, New Jersey, does the same thing and expects a different outcome. So we are going to have to stop doing what we're doing in order to stop getting what we're getting. Something has got to change to choose community over chaos. We cannot, and I say cannot, witness the continuing or the continuation of the deep divides, deep divisions, deep derisiveness that still exists in our country along social, cultural, economic, and above all racial lines. Something has got to change to choose community over chaos. Disturbingly, the issues of the 1960s are very much reflective of the issues of our country in the 2020s. And high among them lie challenges at the nexus of race relations. Recognizing that these challenges are not overt in 2023 as they were in 1963. Today, they're more subtle. We're not talking today about separate but equal, or being denied the right to vote, or fire hoses, or police dogs, or even refusal to being served at a lunch counter, all of which were easily discernible. Today, we're talking about much less observable dynamics, such as unfounded suspicion of a Black man wearing a hoodie, an overly aggressive response to a Black man or woman suspected only of selling cigarettes or using a counterfeit bill, low or no expectations of students of color in schools, systematic barriers for professionals of color to advance in the workplace, differential power and differential rules leading to differential outcomes. Unlike 1963, the issues of 2023 can be completely off the radar for anyone who's been duped into thinking that we live in a post-racial society, which we don't. When compared to 60 years ago, 2020's issues can be much more difficult to articulate, to navigate, and to mediate, much less to eradicate, because they are deeply rooted in perceptions and biases and stereotypes and prejudices and assumptions and privilege and even ignorance. And while the challenges of today may be subtle, the manifestations of the challenges are not subtle at all. From the distribution of wealth in our country, to America's standards of beauty, to the demographic breakdown of corporate America's executive levels, to the sobering deaths of Black and brown women and men, race continues to be a force to be reckoned with in 21st century America. And while people of color can sometimes overstate or overestimate the influence of race, and whites can sometimes underestimate or ignore the influence of race, the fact is there are still some very discernible inequities that one can't help but attribute to race. To get to the real core of the issues is well beyond police training or corporate diversity programs or increasing the number of diverse images on television or even legislation. All of those are important efforts, don't get me wrong. But the next bastion of improving race relations and providing equal opportunity for everyone has to do with how we interact with each other to eliminate walls of misunderstanding. Or in the words and the writings of Dr. King, together we must learn to live as brothers and sisters, or together we will be forced to perish as fools. See, I believe that the single greatest threat of our democracy are the growing divides in our society. I'm talking about the divides between the haves and the have-nots, between the wealthy and the poor, between the rich and the rest, between young and old, Black and white, inner city and suburban, gay and heterosexual, Americans and foreigners, Democrats and Republicans, agnostics and believers, Fox News and MSNBC and CNN, and then the longest standing historical divide that is tearing our country apart. iPhone versus Android. It is tearing us apart, my people. In her TED Talk, Turkish storyteller Elif Shafak reminded me that we all live in some kind of a social and cultural circle, that we are all born into a certain family, race, ethnicity, class, and nation. But if we have no connection whatsoever with the worlds beyond the one we take for granted, then we can suffer the equivalent of a social and cultural death. Our society is increasingly comprised of what she calls and what I call communities of the like-minded. And the danger of these communities of the like-minded that we all surround ourselves with is that we tend to associate with people who are like us. And as a result, we can become more prone to produce stereotypes and assumptions for those who are not like us, cast projections onto those outside of the communities of the like-minded to which we belong. The irony is that as our country and our world continues to diversify, all we're doing is driving ourselves deeper into our communities of the like-minded, which not only undermines the benefits of America's greatest strength, our diversity, but it further exacerbates America's greatest liability, our cultural ignorance. In the absence of real dialogue and real interactions and real understanding that breaks down the walls that can separate us all, our inequalities will exist because our ignorance will persist. So the solution does not lie in Blacks learning more about whites, or even whites learning more about Hispanics, or Hispanics learning more about Blacks, but in all of us learning more about each other. So how do we do this? Where do we go from here? How do we choose community over chaos? Well, the answer to the question of where do we go from here can be summarized in a single sentence. It's been said that if you want to innovate, To change an enterprise or change society, it takes people willing to do what is not expected. Where we need to go is therefore not where we've been. But let me offer for you 5 specific recommendations reflecting Dr. King's writings in his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? And also some of the content in my most recent book, Black Faces in High Places, 10 Strategic Actions for Black Professionals to Reach the Top and Stay There. The first thing we must do, the first recommendation is a foundational one. And that is when you see something that you know to be wrong, be it discrimination or prejudice or racism, or even something more subtle, like the circumstances I mentioned previously, always remember you've got 3 choices. I call them the 3 Fs. First, you can take flight. That is, you can run from the issue. Or second, you can forego the issue. That is, you can defer it until later. Third and finally, you can fight. That is, you can take direct action to address the issues and tackle it head on. I'm not here to tell you exactly what to fight for, but I am here to tell you that the 2 most important days of your life are the day you were born and the day you figure out why you were born. I'm going to tell you that God has sent you here on a mission, which begs you to ask yourself the question, what's your mission? Why were you sent here? Or said differently, what are you willing to fight for? Never forget that somebody who couldn't spell college kicked down a door so you could go to college. Remember, somebody refused to go to the back of a bus so you could sit at the front of the class. Remember, somebody sat in at a lunch counter so you could walk through the doors of corporate America. Remember, somebody sat in a concrete cell so you could break a glass ceiling. Somebody marched down a street so you could run your own business. And somebody followed the road less traveled so you could create the road never traveled. And lastly, Dr. King laid down his life so that you and I could find greater meaning in ours. In other words, if you want to know where we go from here, the first answer is for all of us to accept the responsibility, as Dr. King did, that at some point in our lives, we must all look back and say we fought for something because somebody fought for us. In his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? Dr. King writes the following. The great majority of Americans are uneasy with injustice, but unwilling yet to pay a significant price to eradicate it. So first and foremost, you must stand for something or you will fall for what? Somebody said it, anything. Second, we must not only stand for ourselves, we must also stand for others. There's a famous passage by a German pastor that says the following. You're perhaps familiar with it. First, they came for the communists. And I didn't speak out because I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the trade unionists. And I didn't speak out because I wasn't a trade unionist. And they came for the Jews. And I didn't speak out because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for me. And there was no one left to speak out for me. Think about that. Think about where I'm going. One of the things about the tragedies we've witnessed that has encouraged me is that for almost every single press conference, I've seen nothing but Black people at the podium. One of the things that has most discouraged me is that for almost every single press conference, I've seen nothing but Black people at the podium. And that's not to say that there aren't non-Blacks who care about these issues. Of course there are. And we've seen diverse representation in the marches and the protests and in this movement. But rather it is to say that at times our public responses are still drawn along racial lines. And that hasn't just bothered me as a Black man. It's also bothered some whites. For example, sometime after Trayvon Martin's killing, that was 2012, there was an excellent piece by Michael Skolnick that you see there entitled, Why White People Should Care About Trayvon Martin. Let me read you an excerpt from the article. Skolnick wrote the following. I wrote this piece because when a Black man was killed in our country, Trayvon Martin, my white friends were quiet, eerily quiet. Nobody was talking about it. And I felt the need as a white American man who's been born into this nation as a privileged person to speak up and to say, we've been quiet and we've been quiet for too long. I say to my white friends that you must know that the rights that you take for granted are worthless unless you fight for the rights of others. Know that there's hate crimes against Jews. We can't expect the Jews to stand up for themselves. We can stand up for the Jews. When Muslims are attacked in this country, we have to stand up for the Muslims. And when Black people are attacked in this country, we've got to stand up for them. When immigrants are attacked in this country, we've got to stand for immigrants. We cannot just ask the Black community or any community to stand up for themselves in a given moment. We have to stand with them. If I abstract his point to a broader context, then what I'm saying is this: just as we are all justified in expecting others to stand up for us, we must all stand up for others. We can't only get angry when the rights of our people or our group are affected. We must also stand up for others who are not of our group or are not of our people, because when they see us advocating for them, they are more willing to advocate for us. And we are more likely to respect them, and they are more likely to respect us. Each of us must do a better job, myself included, of standing for all of us, so it is never the case that there is no one left to stand for any of us. This is where we need to go from here to choose community over chaos, or in the eloquent words of the great scholar and philosopher, Flavor Flav. Somebody's laughing, but we're virtual, I can't tell. Flavor Flav said, "United we stand and divided we fall, but together we can stand tall." Yes, those were the words of Flavor Flav. That's right. Or as Dr. King writes in Where Do We Go From Here? Dr. King says the following: "We have reached the stage of organized strength and independence to work securely in alliances. History has demonstrated with major victories the effectiveness, wisdom, and moral soundness of multiracial alliances. Black isolation alone can never approach this goal." Those are Dr. King's words, not mine. The way we reinforce Dr. King's words is by accomplishing my third recommendation, which is to learn about the culture of others at a level beyond the superficial. Here's point 3 of 5. We all live in a society that's becoming more and more diverse. We know this. So-called minority groups will be the majority in the US by the year 2042. And they're already the majority in California and Hawaii, and near majorities in Texas, New York, and Florida. Babies born today in New Jersey are majority minority. So as our country diversifies, one of the places we must undoubtedly go to choose community over chaos and move toward greater racial understanding is getting beyond what Dr. King calls our racial ignorance. And that means establishing real relationships with real people who are not like you. People who don't look like you, don't talk the way you do, don't speak your language, didn't grow up in your neighborhood, don't watch the same news programs you do, don't follow the same social media, don't share your political ideology, etc., etc., etc. And doing so at a level beyond the superficial. I'm talking about stepping outside of your comfort zone in deep and meaningful ways. Why? Because these relationships across difference breed familiarity. Familiarity breeds understanding, and understanding leads to less misunderstanding. It's that simple. And I'm not suggesting you have to have the most diverse relationships, but I am suggesting you must have diversity in your relationships, and not your acquaintanceships, your relationships, your friendships. This is an area where I am challenging myself to do better. And here's some things that you can do, that I can do along these lines. Meeting people on a regular basis in different places that you would normally go. Traveling to other parts of our country or the globe you normally wouldn't go to. Attending events you normally wouldn't attend. Joining organizations you normally wouldn't join. And leveraging technology and social media to connect with people who are markedly of different cultural backgrounds than you. And to translate those technology connections, those social media connections, to real relationships. In his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Dr. King wrote the following: "Like life, Racial understanding is not something that we find, but something we must create. And so the ability of blacks and whites to work together, to understand each other, will not be found ready-made. It must be created by the fact of contact. Again, Dr. King's words from the book, Where Do We Go From Here? See, I have to believe that Officer Derek Chauvin would have been less prone to place his knee on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds if he operated from a place of humanity and not depravity. I have to believe that Officer Darren Wilson would have been less prone to use deadly force on an unarmed Michael Brown at 35 feet away if he didn't already think he looked like a demon. Those are Wilson's words, not my words. And I have to believe that Officer Daniel Pantaleo would have been less likely to use a chokehold if he saw Eric Garner as a reflection of himself or his son or his cousin or his uncle, especially after Garner repeatedly said, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe." And I have to believe that Officer Michael Slager would have been less prone to shoot Walter Hunt in his back, and that Keenan Anderson's officer who tased him 4 times would have been less inclined to do so if either of them saw them as human beings rather than treating them like animals. Fourth of the 5 things. One of the ways to ensure that we are in dialogue with people of different backgrounds is to create formal spaces where we are forced to work across lines of difference. We don't have a choice. I'm talking about physical spaces, virtual spaces, joint forums, joint partnerships, joint organizations that fundamentally cross lines of difference and give us no choice but to move beyond our communities of the like-minded. I'll give you an example. Some of you may be familiar with an organization called Unity Journalists of Color. Unity was founded in 1994 as a strategic alliance advocating news coverage about people of color and aggressively challenging its organizations, its member organizations at all levels to reflect the nation's diversity. Now, Unity represented 10,000 journalists of color, and it was an organization of 4 organizations, namely the Asian American Journalists Association, the National Association of Black Journalists, the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, and the Native American Journalists Association. And every 4 years, rather than doing separate conferences, they did a joint conference together under one umbrella in unity. Clearly a sacrifice, giving up their individual conferences for benefits that could lead to collective work together. Now, sadly, in 2011, the Black journalists left Unity. And then the Hispanic journalists left in 2013, citing financial disorganization. Both organizations have said they would rejoin, but my point is this. The fact that Unity failed to bring all 4 organizations together doesn't mean it wasn't the right thing to do. It was absolutely the right thing to do, and we need more of these formal spaces, and we've only begun to scratch the surface. This is exactly where we need to go from here in order to see more programs like Unity, more extracurricular activities at schools like Unity that facilitate collaboration across lines of difference, more corporate affinity groups and civil rights groups that facilitate collaboration across difference, more religious and faith-based organizations that facilitate collaboration across lines of difference. We need more, we need more, we need more. Dr. King had much to say about this in his book, Where Do We Go From Here? And here's a quote from Dr. King once again. The future of the deep structural changes we seek lie in new alliances of Blacks, Puerto Ricans, labor, liberals, certain church and middle class elements. Those are Dr. King's words. So I'm not saying these alliances are easy. I'm saying they're necessary if we're going to make progress. We must come together, but more importantly, we must stay together. And then lastly, number 5, my final point. While there are issues that can divide us, there are also issues that affect all of us and can unite us. And these issues are becoming more and more common. For example, our educational system. Nearly 1 out of 3 public high school students will not graduate. Yes, I said that. Nearly 1 out of every 3 public high school students will not graduate. Virtually no community, small or large, rural or urban, has escaped this issue. Second, our environment. With only 6% of the world's population, Americans generate 35% of the trash and consume 35% of the world's resources. This affects every American and affects our entire globe. Our high rates of incarceration. More than 1 out of every 100 adults in the US is in prison or in jail. This is a growing issue that none of us can ignore. And our criminal justice system. While it has its strengths, we all know it is far from perfect. In America, police shootings and in-custody deaths are handled by the same prosecutors who work with police to bring cases to trial. We saw that in Ferguson, we saw it in Staten Island. Whereas in France and Spain, these matters are handled by an independent, non-local investigator. In other words, the process of justice is as important as the perception of that process. And right now, the perception has been tarnished. Reforms are needed for everyone to have full confidence in our criminal justice system. Working together to identify common ground and focus on common issues like education, the environment, criminal justice is the fifth and final answer to the question, where do we go from here? How do we choose community over chaos? Or one of my favorite quotes from Dr. King, which is the following: we may have all come on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. We're in the same boat now. So in conclusion, as we go to questions and answers, achieving progress and not regress in 21st century America means asking the very hard questions about whether we are willing to be the ones at the front lines to achieve equity in our society. It means moving beyond our comfort zone in meaningful ways that transcend what is easy, convenient, or superficial. It means dismissing plurality and diversity and multiculturalism and multiracialism for their own sake, but rather pursuing these ideals with the hope of a more just society, a more fair society, and a more equitable society that benefits ultimately us all. And it means taking off the rose-colored glasses that can prevent us from seeing that while we've made tremendous progress, we still got tremendous work to do. But the good news is, we don't need everybody to be on board. We only need a committed few. And I'm hoping that means that each and every one of you who've taken time out of your day to gather for this Frontiers International Plainfield Area 47th Annual MLK Memorial Celebration, that you are willing to follow in the 47 years of tradition of this event and these events. And so, as I go to questions and answers, let me secure my screen one last time. As Dr. King wrote in his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? His words as we close. It will take a small, committed minority to work unrelentingly to win the uncommitted majority. Such a group may well transform America's greatest dilemma into her most glorious opportunity. Since history has shown that the 1960s was a turning point, more specifically, the March on Washington, the Watts uprisings, the Civil Rights Acts of 64 and 65 and 68. Since history has shown these events to be a turning point from protests to greater prosperity, then perhaps the 2020s, or more specifically, the marches and uprisings of 2020, can do the same and be another turning point from protests to greater prosperity and a new ethic that is embodied in my final quote of the day. And that quote says the following: that we are not meant to see through each other, but to see each other through. So let's all recommit here in 2023 to doing our part, small, medium, or large, to foster greater understanding, eliminate walls of misunderstanding, be a bridge between communities of the like-minded that would otherwise be disconnected, and above all, seeing through each other, but above all, not seeing through each other, but rather seeing each other through. By creating a society that is not post-racial, but post-racism. One that is not partially segregated, but wholly integrated. And one that, in answer to the question, where do we go from here? Chaos or community? Never chooses chaos and always chooses community. God bless you and thank you.
Wow. I'm certain that I speak for everyone who has participated in consuming all the information that you've shared, that was a remarkable and profound speech. And I certainly want to thank you for sharing in such a remarkable way, such that it's consumable, but still very much issuing of a challenge that we all have work to do. And so, Dr. Pinkett, thank you so much for that. There are a couple questions that we have gathered thus far, and I will begin with this first one that is available. So I love how you framed the need and the urgency of achieving equity. Really, there is no true way to achieve justice apart from beginning with equity. And so I thank you for that. And this question aligns directly with that sentiment. And the writer says, working in corporate America as a Black man can sometimes be plagued by microaggressions and overt biases. But a common occurrence which tends to get less attention is the presumption of guilt or presumption of incompetence at the hands of white superiors. So the question is this: when working in an organization who appears to be concerned with company culture at the surface, but does not have a diversity, equity, and inclusion program in place, what are some techniques that we can use to highlight these issues that we face without inadvertently becoming a target in the process?
Great question. And these are the very questions that I wrestle with in my last two books. The last book, Black Faces in High Places, which is over my shoulder, and Black Faces in White Places, which is over my shoulder as well. And one of the principles that my co-author, Dr. Jeffrey Robinson, and I espouse is this idea of strength in numbers. In other words, for you to try to tackle that challenge alone, you not only can become a target, you probably will become a target.
Yeah.
And it's a risk to step out on one's own. But if you can find your voice in unison with others, does that guarantee that you all don't become targets? No. But does it mitigate the likelihood that the organization has to heed what you have to say collectively? Yes. And to my remarks and to Dr. King's writings, what I'm not saying is a coalition of all Black people. I'm saying it has to be a coalition that's representative of the organization for those voices to be most effectively heeded. And so this idea of strength in numbers gives you kind of this air cover that it's not just you who can take the heat or have the target on you, but hundreds of you, 50s of you, thousands of you whose voices can be unified. But the second thing I'll say to that is, to the point of it being a corporate context, I would also then arm oneself, not just with the moral case for diversity, equity, and inclusion, but the business case for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Do your homework. There have been study after study after study done that shows the bottom line impact of greater diversity, inclusiveness, and diversity. And if you can arm your collective body with the business case and the moral case, that also, I think, will increase the likelihood of your voices being heard.
Awesome. Thank you so much for answering it in that manner. What I'm hearing you say really is that there is strength in numbers, but what those numbers represent or the makeup of those numbers will also matter.
That's right.
So I think that is of tremendous importance, and I thank you for sharing that. We have another question which says, Dr. Pinkett, do you believe that the recent primaries are a barometer of race relations in this country?
Oh, without question, without question. And I will reiterate my earlier statement. I believe the single greatest threat to our democracy are the growing divides in our society. And if I look to the primary, if I look to the election, if I even look 2 days ago to the 15 attempts it took to elect a Speaker of the House. Yes. Not only are we seeing greater divisiveness, even within divisions, we're seeing divisiveness. The challenge in the House speakership was a party having a problem within the party.
Yeah.
Like now that's second level. First level is you got a House divided between liberals and conservatives. And then in conservatives, you have divisions between far right conservatives and center right conservatives. And that is a problem.
Yeah.
A healthy functioning Republican Party and a healthy functioning Democratic Party behooves all Americans. There's nothing that we gain by having infighting across parties and infighting within parties. So to answer the question directly, absolutely yes. I believe what we're seeing in primaries and elections and in our House of Representatives and our Senate and the executive branch and the legislative branch is a barometer for our society, is reflective of who we've chosen to represent us and who we have accepted as our representatives. And until we heed the wake-up call, because I heard another great quote that 2020 was not a wake-up call, people were hitting snooze. Until we heed the wake-up call, if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to keep getting what we're getting. We need representative leaders that are unaccepting of the divisiveness and are willing to embody a new ethic that I attempted to try to paint that picture today.
Wow. So very good answer, obviously. I do want to respond with a follow-up question. And that is, you state, you talk about the importance of a healthy party on both sides of the aisle. And in many ways, there are people who are of the thought that this construct that we see now, this two-party system, in many ways works against us. I've heard arguments where they've said this is the furthest away from what our founding fathers originated when voting first became a thing in this country, whereby parties themselves did not truly exist in the way that they operate today. Rather, individuals would self-nominate or be nominated. And obviously that would just water down the field of eligible candidates. But what do you say to that person who thinks that this party system, this two-party system, is detrimental to society, especially when it comes to, like you said, the infighting within parties? I'm seeing it on the Republican side. We're also seeing it on the Democratic side. I don't think it's as pronounced yet, but I do believe that it's coming. What do you say to that?
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked that question, Safir, because what I actually also believe is healthy for our democracy is growing numbers of independents also. Now, there are Democrats that might critique me for that and Republicans who might critique me for that for well, but the underlying spirit of your question is how do we hold the parties accountable?
Yeah.
And how do we ensure that they don't take votes for granted?
Right.
And I do not think it's accidental that we're seeing every year a rise in the number of independent voters, because it sends either of two messages. Either it sends a message to the parties that I don't believe you're responsive to my needs, or it sends the message implicitly or explicitly, you will not take my vote for granted. You want my vote? You're going to earn it every election, every cycle, every 2 years, every 4 years, local, state, and national.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing, in my humble opinion. Democrats want your vote, they have to earn it. Republicans want your vote, they've got to earn it. And if you're independent and that's your choice, should that be your choice, that could be because you become disillusioned with the infighting across parties, or because you're sending the message, you want my vote? Come get it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think as with many issues that plague us as a society, individuals, I believe, become a little overwhelmed by the weight of certain issues to the point that they believe they can't truly do anything about them. And so one particular issue that comes to mind is this vast racial wealth gap that exists in America, more specifically in New Jersey, where the wealth gap is among the worst in the country. What do you say to that person who believes that they don't have the power to move the dial toward justice in that area?
Yeah, so let's first make sure we're clear on the numbers. The median household wealth of white families in New Jersey is about $322,500. The median household wealth of a Black or Latino family, Black, $17,700, Latina, $26,100. Those numbers speak for themselves. Now, if you asked every millionaire, how did you make your millions? The lottery, inheritance, investing in the stock market, passed down from a generation that preceded them. 7 out of every 10 millionaires will tell you they earn their millions by owning a business. So mathematically, the way that we can and will close the gap between 300,000 and 20 or 17,000 has to be creating more business ownership, more entrepreneurship. My first book was Campus CEO, the student entrepreneur's guide to launching a multi-million-dollar business. Why? Because, in fact, I got that one right here too, because I started a business when I was in college at Rutgers with 3 Black men who had never fathomed being business owners. We were broke like no joke. But because we started so young, we had lots of runway to fail, to make mistakes, to be broke and broke again. And now we run a company that's one of the largest Black-owned businesses in America. The same 4 founders. And that is creating jobs in New Jersey. It's creating opportunities in New Jersey. It's opening doors in New Jersey. So last thing I'll say is this, because you got me on this entrepreneurship thing now. You see, I get excited. The number one predictor of whether you will own a business is not your education, not your race, not your income, not your zip code. The number one predictor of if you will own a business is if your parents owned a business. Do you see the picture I'm painting? So to be something, you have to see something. Yeah. And when our generation sees more business ownership, they say to themselves, if they can do it, I can do it. And then we create more wealth, we create more jobs, we create more opportunity to close the wealth gap. Jobs alone is not going to do it. We have to own something, not owe something.
Yeah. That's definitely a profound statement, answer in all of the statements that were contained therein, because it reminds me of the fact that when slave owners were migrating to New Jersey, they were incentivized financially to do so. Granted, an acre of land, additional acre of land for every slave that they brought with them, or I should say enslaved African.
Well said.
Those same foundational issues continue to plague us today because, again, generationally, that wealth was amassed and continued to grow at rates, the likes of which we would never see through an individual's efforts just grow wealth. With opportunities that are available. So it seems that the answer is absolutely correct, that business ownership is a path forward. It is a way that we can begin to change the trajectory of the next generation to come. But then that leads to the question of Black reparations and whether that is a viable option or whether it's even one that would ever truly be taken seriously within the houses of government. It seems locally in several states, of course, that they are entertaining it. There are a number of committees and or councils being established to study the impact of reparations. But the question, I guess, is really, where do we go from here? And how can we in any way see that takes place?
I'm encouraged, I must say, Safir, at the growing movement around reparations. If you had asked me before George Floyd if I thought reparations had any possibility, watch me. Publicly, I would have said yes. Privately, I would have said no.
I understand the sentiment.
But I tell you, for those that don't know, check out what the Boston City Council just did December 14th. The Boston City Council just passed an ordinance to commission a study on the feasibility of reparations. In fact, said differently, a study to identify ways to provide reparations.
Wow.
And Boston is not alone. To your point, Safir, you can look at other cities across the country. I'm only citing Boston as one, where there are actual efforts to say, how can we redress the historic economic inequities that are dated back to the enslavement of Africans? And there's incredible works that have been done, which you cited, that have looked at how the economic inequities that we witness today have been generational, long-standing legacy effects of the inequities that date back to the likes of 40 Acres and a Mule and the GI Bill and other doors that were closed to enslaved Africans but were open to other populations. So I'm encouraged, if not convinced, something's going down. And the murder of George Floyd, we all know, was a wake-up call, but it was also a window of tragic opportunity, meaning it was tragedy that bore opportunity. And it was a moment that led to what I believe is now a movement. And we're in the midst of that movement. The question is, what is our role to continue the movement?
Yeah. And really, this is just a comment, and I'll jump into the next question immediately after. But it reminds me of the fact that, to your point, these inequities and atrocities that we've observed historically still permeate society today, albeit a bit more subtle in their delivery. My neighbor, who happens to be an attorney, she is undertaking the work now to launch a lawsuit against a particular bank who they have proven it's a mortgage company, but they have proven they have systematically been undervaluing homes owned by Black residents. And she had a colleague of hers who happened to be Caucasian request a valuation of the same property, and the price was nearly 1.5 times what they had cited. So these realities are still in existence today. And I just wanted to say that for the benefit of our listeners, that these are true and real issues that continue to plague us. It's just a matter of knowing what to look for and being able to observe it as a result. There was another question that came in, and I want to ask this one now. The writer is asking, how do we inspire and convince our young people that education is the key toward a successful future, considering the onslaught of misinformation and distraction of negative music and social media? They peppered in some additional items there, but that's the question. Great
question. And an important question, because it speaks to our young people. I believe the most important thing we can do with our young people is to ground them in knowing who they are and the legacy that they come from. Knowing that, for example, for African Americans, our history did not begin in slavery or as enslaved Africans. It dated back to ancient Africa. To know that no matter what discipline they desire to pursue, law, medicine, engineering, education, political office, no matter what it is, there's a legacy that precedes them of excellence and overcoming seemingly insurmountable challenges. And to give them the real live role models and mentors that they can touch and they can feel and they can see, to know what's possible in the here and now. And for them to be rooted in two things: First is their identity. Identity is begging the question, who are you? How do you define yourself? Do you claim yourself as a child of God? Do you claim yourself as a proud African American who comes from a legacy of excellence? Like, who are you? Yeah. Is the first question our young people. We must help them to find the answer to that question. I said before, the most important days of your life, the day you were born, the day you figure out why you were born.
Yes.
Second question on the heels of that is a sense of purpose, sense of direction. Think of identity like an anchor. It's what grounds our young people. Think of purpose like a compass. It's what guides our young people to know what's possible for them. What direction do they endeavor to pursue? What vision do they have for themselves? And how do we, again, paint a picture of what's possible in this world that they can see a reflection of themselves? You know, if you don't know who you are, somebody else will define you.
Yes.
And if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So it is identity and purpose that I believe are the grounding principles of how we convince our young people to convince themselves that they have a purposeful future and an incredible legacy that grounds their identity.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not afraid to admit that both those remarks just moved me like I did not expect. So I certainly appreciate that. There was a statement that came in by text message from my little cousin. It's only a statement. It's not a question, but you can give remarks if you like. She says, we need to begin to own something and not owe something. So while I believe there certainly is a place for credit, there's definitely a place for borrowing. And in fact, in many ways, it's a means to wealth. I think that the statement itself does have some validity and certainly should begin to shift the way that we view finances. I think in many ways, we are at a deficit when it comes to financial literacy, primarily because, again, of all these generational issues. But now that we have many Black-led school districts and other means to teaching our youth, I think that is something that we really need to begin to shift our focus toward so that we can ground them in that identity that you've mentioned, knowing where they're going, but also how to utilize finances to help them get there.
Without a doubt, I'm a firm believer that there are two remaining significant hurdles for progress. I mean, we've conquered equity matters in voting, in desegregating schools, in fair and equal opportunity, et cetera. But the last two hurdles, health and wealth. Health and wealth. Now, we didn't talk about health. There's folks out there nodding their heads right now. But, you know, communities of color are overrepresented and over-indexing on any number of health indicators. That's another conversation for another MLK Day. Yeah. But to the question, economics, which in some ways is an overlay that can lead to better health, better education, better jobs, better opportunity. Given the kinds of wealth inequities I described a moment ago, just in New Jersey, 300,000 against 17,000, that's the 21st century agenda for equity is largely health and wealth. Yeah. And it has to be centered on not trying to get corporations to hire more people. It has to be getting on Black and brown folk to own more companies to create the jobs for people in the communities. And this entrepreneurial thread, which I cannot emphasize enough, is a part of our legacy. You look at Madam C.J. Walker. I mean, you look at John H. Johnson. You look at Kathy Hughes in the present day. I mean, the list just goes on and on. We have a legacy of excellence in creating wealth. We just need, now watch this. We've got lots of billionaires. We just need more. And I volunteer myself.
Yeah, I'm with you. My hands are raised. Absolutely. I do want to self-correct. I recognize that the own something, not owe something originated with what you were saying earlier. My cousin just happened to regurgitate that when adding some context. But with that said, you mentioned again this vast wealth gap when you're comparing families. I want to add just a little color for our listeners as well. And that is when you talk about individuals, the net worth of white individuals in New Jersey is currently an average of $103,000 compared with just $4,900 for Black individuals and $2,300 for Latinx individuals.
Yeah.
So,
and let me double down on what you said also. So it's not just the entrepreneurship piece, it's also financial literacy.
Yeah.
Because most people generate their wealth through things like home ownership, for example, right, which is accessible to everyone if you practice sound financial responsible habits.
Yeah, which for many of us I think is easier said than done, but is possible.
Yeah.
And so it requires discipline. It requires valuing the purpose and the identity that we identify. But without that value, there won't be any valuation attributed to it when we're considering our finances. And so I'm so thankful that you added that as you were wrapping up there. We are coming up on the top of the hour. And I just want to take this opportunity again, Dr. Randall, to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us on today, sharing yourself with us today, and for really recommitting with us in this fight to overcome all the obstacles that stand in our way for a more just society. So I'll give you a few moments if you'd like to give any closing remarks, and then I will address everyone and we'll close out.
Oh, thank you, Safir. I want to say thank you to you. Thank you to the co-chairs of this event. Thank you to Frontiers International, Plainfield Area Chapter, all of its members, past, present, and future. And to all those who were gathered for today's celebration, the performers, the artists, the young people, the elected officials, the leaders from the community that have all rallied together for 47 years. 47 years is something to be proud of, Frontiers International. And I'm just honored to have had this opportunity to be the speaker for this 2023 program. I want to give a shout. I got family members who have tuned in today. Shout to all my family. I love you all. Thank you for being online to support. I got friends and colleagues like David Poindexter who have been instrumental in making this possible. I'll just leave everyone with this question that Dr. King posed to us and I posed to all of you today. Where do we go from here? Chaos or community? Underlying that is a question that we have to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, am I willing to be at the front lines of change? Community is a contact sport. Community is an active, not a passive endeavor. And it's not about sitting and watching what you want to see others do. It's about charging oneself with what you're willing to do. And I'm hopeful that from today's conversation, from today's dialogue, from today's presentation, that you have sparked something in you as we celebrate Dr. King's birthday and his legacy and his mission that prompts you to say to yourself, what more can I do to choose community over chaos and to honor the spirit of Dr. King, that is a spirit of unity, a spirit of progress, and a spirit of fighting for what one believes in. So let's continue to fight the fight into 2023 and make this moment into a movement so we are never in this moment again. God bless you. And thank you.
Yes. Thank you so very much, Dr. Pinkett. And to all of you who are joining us from wherever you might be, I thank you for your time on today. Moreover, I thank you for recommitting yourselves to changing the dynamic of the world around you. In order for us to truly realize change, it requires that we understand that complacency has no place in it. For complacency is nothing more than compliance with the status quo. And in order to move that dial toward your destiny such that we have a more just society, I encourage you, take action, get involved, get your hands dirty, and understand that what was once impossible becomes possible when you become engaged. I'm Safir Jenkins, and we are the Frontiers International Plainfield Area Club, and we stand for advancement through service. And it has been our pleasure to serve you today. Thank you.
Bye.